I love kimchi.
I do not like kimchi. She'll walk around the house just eating kimchi.
And apparently it smells up the house. I
Yeah.
don't smell it. I think kimchi is great, but
Welcome to the Sunday Reset. My name is Jen,
my name is Jill.
and we are the hosts of the Frugal Friends Podcast and this YouTube channel. And in today's session video episode,
Series? Episode.
Today, we are talking about our weekly money moves, our meal plan, and stick around because we are going to share some harsh truths about decluttering and organizing. All right, Jill, what was your money move this week?
Oh, it was an exciting week for me because I learned that Eric and I have unclaimed money. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And if you all don't know about this, it's possible you might have some money waiting in the wings for you as well. You can go to a website like findmymoney.com.
Which is an actual website. It's not a scam.
Not a scam. So essentially, a lot of times people will have insurance premiums that they overpaid on, or money that was left over in a bank, or sometimes inherited money. And for whatever reasons, these institutions aren't able to find you and give you your money. So they go to the state's treasury typically, and you then have to file with your state's or that state's treasury, wherever the money is being held, in order to release the funds to you. So Eric and I have checked in the past. I mean, I'll do this periodically because why not? It's fun. You never know. Did somebody leave me millions of dollars?
Yeah, it should be checked like annually.
Yeah, it should be on your annual list to do. Well, actually, it was my mother-in-law who found it. Thanks, Linda.
Wow.
She loves to check probably about monthly. She's just typing in everybody's name she knows. So it's her own
Everybody
little
needs
mission.
an angel like Linda to just
Yes.
check to see if they have unclaimed money. And maybe you're that angel for your friends and family.
Yeah. And so we had two unclaimed monies. One of them was, and so they won't tell you the exact amount, but they'll use a metric. One was under $100. That could mean anything. That could literally mean there's some change they're trying to get to you. And then we have one that's over $100. I don't know how much over. I'm uncertain, but I started the process. These were in Pennsylvania. So then I went on to the Pennsylvania Treasury's website to their unclaimed money section. And you just have to prove that you are who you say you are. Some version of proof of living at the address that you said you were at during that time. One of them is an overpaid insurance premium. And I forget what the other one is. I want to say both of them had to do with insurances.
A lot,
in the
yeah.
past.
Mine was an overpaid insurance premium last time I checked.
Mhm.
But I have not checked in over a year.
Yeah.
And it is time.
It's going to be a while before I get the money. The one that's over $100, they are wanting more information from me than the one that's under $100. Like the one that was under $100, they're like, we're processing it. You should receive a check in the mail within like 10 business days. And the other one, they said, expect 3 to 4 months before we even get to your claim, much less get you paid. So it is playing a little bit of the long game. But for about 30 minutes of my time, I might get a little bit of cash in the mail soon.
Love that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
What's
so
yours?
my money move this week is a follow-up to last week.
Ooh, I love a follow-up.
Okay, so I have two. So the first one would be a follow-up is that last week I said that I was having trouble with buying this latte that I love so much. And it wasn't the money part of like the spending part of it that was problematic. It was that I wanted to keep it special. Like for me, this latte had always been a special treat, like once or twice a month. And I got it like 3 or 4 times in a week. And I was like, we got to nip this in the bud. And I have not bought one since that day.
Whoa.
So that's
It's
been
been a
a
week.
whole week. Yeah.
Mhm.
So that's that. Part two, and this could be why I haven't bought one in a week. I had the flu.
Yes. Money move, get sick.
Right. Well, here's the thing. I um was too sick to like cook. And so we ate out a few times, but also I was able to pull out freezer meals, like fully cooked and ready to go freezer meals that had just been like, usually it's soups and chilies, like stuff like that, that make, instead of like 4 servings, they make like 6 to 8.
Mhm.
And I really don't do well with leftovers more than a day
Mhm.
later.
Mhm.
So if there are more than 4 servings, I will freeze whatever's left over. And so I had this soup that I'll talk about in the meal plan, but I was able to just, in my hazy, sick stupor, pull that out, defrost it. So when Traps is like, okay, what are we having for dinner? And I'm in bed with the covers like pulled up, I was like, the soup is defrosted, heat it up. So that saved us easily, because when we even get quick service takeout, there's 4 of us, we're spending about $30 to $40.
Mhm.
So, because the small one doesn't eat much. So that saved us at, 30 to $40
Right.
right there.
Mhm.
So that
Your
money
money
move
move
is
was a decision you made months
right.
ago.
But
Yeah, that's
it
great.
is being cognizant of, every time I make something that has more than 2 servings of leftovers, freezing it in my little super cubes.
Mhm.
Those things are
They
amazing.
are very cool.
We will link them in the description, but
Mm,
they've just been a lifesaver. So
yeah.
they're also great if I have a friend who I think needs a meal and I don't have time to cook one. I just pull out a freezer meal and I say, here you go. Whenever you
Yeah.
need a meal and you can't be bothered to cook, here you go.
Mhm. Okay, so speaking of food, let's talk about our meal plans for
Meal
the
plan
past
time.
week. So you were sick. Did you still cook some things?
I did still cook some things. So I'll talk about the first thing that I quote unquote cooked but didn't really, was a turkey white bean soup with kale.
Mhm.
And it was just the perfect sick soup.
Mhm.
Honestly, that between that and tomato or like a roasted red pepper, they're just the perfect sick soups. It had something green in it. It had like crumbly ground turkey, white beans, I think like a little bit of lemon. So it was a very good soup to
Mm.
have while ill.
That's a nice way to have kale too. Like if you don't like a kale salad for like all the crunch and bitter that it
Yeah.
is, kale in a soup, it really tames down a
Yeah.
lot.
Or you have a little bit of kale left over, you just
Chop it
chop
in.
it real small, throw it into the soup,
Mhm.
and it freezes and defrosts really great.
Cool.
Oh, it was perfect.
Mhm.
Um, I also, before I got sick, made the one pot buffalo chicken and rice.
Mhm.
So that's my go-to from Jen Eats Good.
I do love that one, although I
Yeah.
will say the last 2 times I made it, the rice did not cook.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know what I'm
I
following the
I
recipe.
always over add water. Whenever there is a one pot rice recipe,
Mhm.
honestly, anytime I cook rice, I add a half cup more water than it requires. So for white rice, usually they'll say like for 2 cups, you need a cup and a half
Mhm.
of liquid. I always do 1 to 1.
Yeah.
If it's brown rice, I cook brown rice like pasta. Like I just
Mhm.
fill the whole thing with water, let the brown rice cook, and then I drain it.
Yeah.
So like I always over add, because you can always cook out extra moisture at the end.
I think it what the rice just wasn't absorbing the liquid. I don't know what was going on with it, but now 2 times in a row that's happened to me. So just
Maybe,
beware.
what kind of
It
coconut
is
milk are you
very
using?
good. Just like Goya, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe your coconut milk is too high quality. It's too thick.
Yeah, that could be. I do love the recipe because there have been times where I've made it and it's bomb.
Mm.
So I think if I ever did make it again, I'll probably just cook the rice separate, honestly, and like let it be a two-pot meal. But fair warning that
Yeah.
my experience with it has been
I
hit or miss.
I always add extra, and part of it is because I like to put the lid on a little bit off so steam comes
Mm-hmm.
out. So you need to add more water
If you're
if you're
doing that.
letting steam out.
Mm-hmm.
And so I always add extra water. And then if it's a little soupy when I open it up, I just let it cook with with the top off for a little
For
bit, and it
longer.
firms right up. And you want it to be a little watery if you're saving it for leftovers. At
Mm-hmm.
least the leftovers you want to be a little soft because it'll dry in the fridge.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So, quick tip. And then the last one is I did braised short ribs. I told you about these. I didn't, and maybe it was my, I don't know if it's me or the short ribs, but I just don't think I'm a short ribs girl, but the flavor was great. They didn't fall off the bone like I was promised.
Mm-hmm.
They came off the bone.
Mm-hmm.
But I just don't think I'm a short ribs girl.
I don't
But
think
the
I've ever
flavor of
cooked short
this,
ribs.
I wanted to try it because they looked really good.
Mm-hmm.
And the flavor was good. So this is from the Pioneer Woman. It's braised short ribs. But what really made it was her goat cheese polenta that she put with it.
Whoa.
Oh, wow. Polenta is like grits, and you could do mashed potatoes. I think that's what most people do with short ribs. But like doing the polenta with goat cheese,
Whoa.
wow.
That sounds next level.
Other level.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Sometimes it is fun to just try something new. Like not
Yeah.
every day can we make all these different things from scratch and have the time to put into learning a new recipe. But when we do, it can really make cooking feel really fun. It can make eating at home feel reinvigorating. And
Mhm.
so sometimes infusing those into the meal plan really helps me to like stay on track
Yeah.
with it.
How about you?
So I did, speaking of trying new recipes, I made kimchi fried rice for the first time. Fried rice is in my repertoire, but I wanted to try like a new version of fried rice, and it turned out really great.
Because you
I
love
loved it.
kimchi.
I love kimchi.
I do not like kimchi. She'll walk around the house just eating kimchi.
And apparently it smells up the house.
Yeah.
I don't smell it. I think kimchi is great, but I will say when you make kimchi fried rice, you're cooking it, so it does not retain the same like overwhelming
Acidity.
flavor. Yeah, like that kind of cooks out a little bit, but it had a really nice spice to it, and then you put a fried egg on top for some protein, and that was lovely. I do recommend, and that is linked. I also, this was my week of like new things. I also tried cooking an eye of round roast for the first time.
I have not done that.
And this was in part because we, the Frugal Friends, have a Costco membership. And we went a couple weeks ago to purchase some things for our party that we did for our book launch. Buy What You Love Without Going Broke launched into the world. And of course, we celebrated. And while I was there, there were 2 eye of round roasts on sale, like for a good price. And so I'm like, well, then here's an opportunity for me to try something. It's been in the freezer for a while now. But typically I have people over for dinner on Monday nights. And so it was a really good option to feed 4 people. And it turned out really well, although I will say mine cooked a lot faster than the recipe said. I think the recipe was like, it's going to take about an hour, 20 minutes total. And I think it actually took 40 minutes total.
Whoa.
So then it ended up sitting for a while. And I wanted to keep it warm. So like once the oven had cooled down just a smidge, I put it back in the oven just to stay warm. That ended up like cooking it like all the way through and made it a little more tough than when it had first come out. That was a big
Uh,
bummer, but still, like, the flavor was really great. And if we had been able to eat it shortly out of the oven, it would have been like absolute perfection.
wow.
And then I made spinach, tomato, and goat cheese egg bites. That was something I batched.
Yum.
So it's like 12 eggs total. And the recipe I linked gives you like 3 different recipe options. I chose the spinach goat cheese because I had all of those things left over and a ton of eggs. So made those and having some throughout, we had some throughout the week, and then they also freeze really well. So kind of kept 12, froze 12.
Yeah, they do freeze so well.
And I enjoy them for both breakfast and lunch. So there was a day that we did the leftover kimchi fried rice with an egg bite with it
Mm,
instead of like the fried egg. So that gave it a little bit of variety and then repurposing.
nice.
Yeah.
All right, let's get into your question.
Woo!
So today our question is from Ryan, and they ask, what is minimalism to you? Is it a lifestyle, an aesthetic? Does it appeal because you hate clutter? Interested to hear what draws people to minimalism. So this was a fun one.
Yeah.
And I found this quote from Joshua Becker,
Mm.
who is our favorite person who talks about minimalism. And it is intentionally promoting the things we most value and removing everything that distracts us from it.
That's a fun way of summarizing.
Yeah, what would you
I
say?
I mean, honestly, I would say it's simplicity for me. My draw to minimalism is the desire for less to have to think about, less to clean,
Mm-hmm.
less to overwhelm me, less to organize, less to declutter. Like, but yet I do see it as a spectrum. Like, people can describe themselves as minimal, and yet their lifestyles and the amount of things that they own can be, anywhere within that spectrum. I think the thing about, this quote that kind of gets me, and where I think some people can get stuck, is that part of removing anything that distracts you from what you most value. It's like, well, what about just the essentials? What about
Mm-hmm.
the things that, I just use in my kitchen that
Yeah,
are
but they're not
useful?
distracting me from what I value
Right,
most.
that's true. Yeah. I think for me, it is truly just like minimal clutter.
Yeah.
Not just having things around that don't have a place
Mm-hmm.
is part of that definition for
Yeah.
me. What about for you?
Minimalism feels extreme to me,
Mm.
which is why I also prefer simplicity. Like, when I hear minimalism, I automatically think of uh, the minimalists who became the minimalists because they put everything they owned in the boxes and then only took out what they needed and
Mm-hmm.
ended up with so little. And
Mm-hmm.
to me, that is the wrong way to do it, because when you take everything away first approach, it doesn't really it doesn't feel sustainable. I like that intentional, like, elevate first, subtract second
Mm-hmm.
sort of idea.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, like, again, like, I just think there's too much like declutter, like the deity of decluttering,
Yeah.
honestly. Like, I think that's our solution to everything. When we, too much consumerism, declutter. Too much clutter, declutter. Minimalism, declutter.
Mm-hmm.
Like, people who are watching the Buy Now documentary on Netflix, which is a good documentary, didn't really give you any, like, action tips to go out after.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what do I do now that I feel bad about buying things from Amazon? I'll declutter. When really that wasn't the answer.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, like, the best action, like, that we can take is, first, when you, like, we've defined what minimalism is to us, right? And it can
Mm-hmm.
be different for everyone, because I think if there's only one definition for minimalism, that's extremism. If it's having 2 chairs and no tchotchkes,
Mm-hmm.
that's, people get, like, so extremist and mean,
Mm-hmm.
like, when people are not the same kind of minimalist as they are. So we don't want to do that. Instead, just like, I think it's fighting the urge to like consume and declutter, like
Mhm.
as the answers.
Yeah.
So instead, we wanted to propose some harsh truths about decluttering and to that extent, organizing, because I think organizing can also be our solution for a lot of things when it doesn't need to be, where we're just like neatly organizing our clutter and hiding
Mhm.
it.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, because minimalism is not quite the same as frugality or as decluttering, but they can intersect with one
Yeah.
another. But I think it's important that we look at these harsh truths as it relates to how we might foresee and understand minimalism. And the first is that decluttering is an absolute waste of time if we're not also targeting our consumption and understanding the ways in which we are
Mhm.
consuming things, buying things, the purchases that we make. And so if we are the action step in buy now of just declutter, if we are decluttering first, just throwing away things, we're not actually getting to the root of why did I bring those items into my home in the first place? And what steps am I going to be taking in order to make sure that I don't find myself in this place again in a week, a month, or a year from
Mhm.
now? When really we've got to be looking at what brought me here before we just start taking action.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, for us, frugality is good stewardship. And I like that a lot more than just minimalism for minimalism's sake. Like, when you're being a good steward of your physical space, then you are not just decluttering it for the sake of having less stuff or minimalism, but you're being a good steward of what you bring in
Mm-hmm.
to the space. So
Mm-hmm.
you're also paying attention to what you are consuming, which I think was the real takeaway, should have been the real takeaway for the Buy Now documentary.
Yeah.
The second harsh truth is that organizing is not a flex. It's a marketing campaign.
Oh, this is a harsh truth, but I like
And
it.
this is for all my
It's
type A girls,
tantalizing.
all my type A girlies.
Mm.
It's not a flex, like how organized you are. And it doesn't necessarily make you look more minimalist or decluttered. I don't think like we see the overconsumption videos on Instagram and TikTok. And I don't necessarily think anybody watching this is falling prey to that, but it doesn't mean like you don't have to buy everything in those videos to fall prey to it. If you
Mhm.
bought one thing because of something, one organizing thing because of something you saw on social media, it worked.
Mm.
And so I think being really cautious about how we are like processing the things we keep, um, and then how we're judging ourselves and others on the things that they keep and we keep.
I think one of the biggest delineations to make here is that organization is not the same thing as minimalism. People can have and consume so much and be organized. I mean, we see this a lot,
Mhm.
even on like the television shows that show people organizing this like closet full of shoes and clothing and handbags just to make room for more stuff. So, but I will also temper this with I do love being organized. It does help me to feel more at ease, knowing that my things have a place, knowing where to put them back to creates less stuff just lying around. So I do value organization. It helps me be more efficient in my kind of day to day. But I think, especially the organization that requires you to make any visit to the bin store is unnecessary. Like a
Yeah.
lot of my organization is utilizing old cardboard boxes or previous plastic tubs that, I used for one thing and now I'm using for this, or cans or jars, whatever I have lying around the house is what I use to organize. So I think that's an important thing to also prioritize if organization is also something that you enjoy doing.
Yeah.
But it is not the same thing as minimalism.
And if you've got stuff and it's organized, like, don't let anybody not call you a minimalist just because you have stuff.
Mhm.
And so, on the other end of the spectrum, too, you can have collections, you can have memorabilia, you can have stuff and still consider yourself a minimalist, because that's probably 5 to 10% of your life. Whereas if you are a minimalist in the other 90%, like, you're on it. You're really doing it. So,
Mhm.
yeah, there is no single definition of it,
Mm.
but saying, you know, having everything put away in a place and not out is not necessarily minimalism. It may just be like very organized hoarding.
The final third harsh truth is that no one actually wants your
This is
stuff.
my favorite one.
This is a fun one. Of course, there are some holes to poke, but before we poke those holes, we want to say that no one wants your clothes. And this is an interesting statistic. So, estimates suggest that as much as 85% of donated clothing might not be resold and actually ends up being discarded in some way. And I will say, just anecdotally, this is my experience in trying to resell my things on Facebook Marketplace or even other websites. My clothes do not sell. Uh, I feel like I buy quality. They don't have stains. There's no tears in them, but just people won't buy the clothing. I don't know why that is. I will buy secondhand clothing, but it is true that, like, you go to a thrift store, the majority of those clothes are not being bought, and they've got to do something with them, aka discard it, in order to make room for more people dropping off more clothing.
Mm-hmm.
And so, while yes, it is still good to donate and shop secondhand, and all of these things are still true, I think sometimes we can use that as an excuse for consumption of, well, when I'm done with it, I'll just donate it. But we don't actually think, but then what's the life cycle of the thing after I've
Yeah.
donated it? Will people actually buy it, or does it just make me feel better about the stop it'll take in between me and the landfill?
Yeah. When the fires in LA were happening, they were getting so much donated clothing that was complete garbage.
Mm.
They were telling people, stop donating clothes to us because literally we can't use most of this. You are donating your garbage, and it's just creating more work for people. So it's true that, like, it's not a sustainable way. It's not circular in the way that you think it is.
Mhm.
And 5%, just 5% of it ends up in local landfills. Most of it, we've seen the pictures in Africa of like huge piles of clothes and all that.
That we will just ship over
Yeah,
for uh, destruction, for
5%,
trash.
yeah, and ends up in local landfills, which is equal to 17 million tons. 17 million tons of clothing ends up in our municipal garbage heaps.
Mhm.
So, yeah. And then also, I will say to my sweet baby boomers, I say this to you, look in your eyes with love. All the stuff you're saving for your kids, they don't want it.
Mm.
They don't. I know. You wanted your parents' stuff because it meant something to you, but your kids don't want your stuff. And you can
This
let me know in the
one's
comments if I'm wrong. Not if you're a baby boomer. I'm looking at you with love.
Uh, there are some things that I have wanted from my mom, but not nearly all of the things
You
that she
think
has
the
tried to
things that
give to
your kids
me.
want, they'll let you know.
Yeah. Here's what most of us don't want. All of the memorabilia from our childhood. I think that this is primarily nostalgic for the parent
Yes.
and not necessarily for the child. I think, we went through this even when Eric's mom tried to give us Eric's Christmas ornaments that he handmade when he was like 3, 5, 7, and they're adorable. but he wasn't my child. He's my adult husband. So like, I don't want the thing he made at 3. Like if I had a child, I'd want something, so I was saying to her, I'm like, keep putting them on your tree because you remember him giving that to you. You remember the moment that he created that. You remember him as a kid. I have no understanding or recollection of him as a child. I met him in adulthood. So those are the types of things. And even for my mom, she's kept so much of like me in first grade, second grade, third grade, fifth grade. And it's just like, I don't need the book reports that I wrote.
Yeah.
But it is a tough one because
And
there is a lot of nostalgia wrapped up in it.
And it creates, and especially like things you think are valuable, but are not in reality valuable. So like my mom's fiance has a house full of his parents' things. It's like a hoarder house because both of his parents saved all of these collections that they thought were valuable.
Yeah.
And they thought they were leaving him an inheritance of this stuff. He'd be able to sell it and make a lifetime of money.
Mm-hmm.
And it's false. These things are not worth money. The work that would be required to list them and the time to sell them is not worth it. So the only thing they left him was the stress of having to deal with this stuff, the guilt of having to get rid of things that his parents cared about. And so he keeps putting it off.
Mm-hmm.
So that is the true inheritance that will be left. But you let us know if we're wrong in the comments. And
they will.
Thank you for letting us reset for the week with you. Please let us know what you liked and what you didn't like. And we're
what
still getting,
cooking.
what you're cooking. We're still getting started with this type of new format. And we will see you next week.
See you next week. Have a good one.
Bye.